Hello everyone and welcome to the Speed for Lifts webinar hosted by yours truly, Sam Portland of Sportland Training and Fitness. It is my great pleasure to be here presenting to you guys and girls today on what is the second anniversary of Speed for Lifts, the velocity-based training device that we're all here to learn and talk about today. A little bit more about myself before we progress. I've been an elite coach for nearly 10 years now. Across that time, I've worked with multiple international rugby athletes, professional rugby athletes, elite track and field athletes, athletes in the NFL, athletes that play international field hockey, and the list goes on. And throughout that period of time, I've been faced with a lot of training questions because at this point in my career, to where I was even 5 years ago, I didn't have access to the technology that we do now. See, velocity-based training in a measured sense and the accessibility of it, such as the device of Speed for Lifts, has not been readily available up until the last few years. And this has really revolutionized the accuracy of my training from a couple of points of view. But let me tell you about the problems that I faced before that, because you have to understand, and this may be something that you're doing now, because if you're here, you're interested in the device and what it has to offer. Trying to generate specific speed and power adaptations without measuring it is incredibly difficult, incredibly challenging, and very frustrating, because the problem that we have is pre-prescribing off of old 1RMs that do not factor in fatigue, readiness, adaptation, can cause all sorts of problems within our training paradigm. Even if we are using bi-weekly cycles or even monthly cycles, and heaven forbid we're programming up to 8 weeks in advance, we just don't know the effect of our training. And if you know who I am and do follow me, you know I'm a massive advocate of data-driven holistic training, which is the most important. We use the numbers to inform the person, and we make them better with sound training rationale. So I think that gets my point across exactly why I'm here with you today, and I am incredibly pleased to talk to you about Speed for Lifts. Now, me personally, I've used a couple of velocity-based training devices over the recent years, and I'm telling you that Speed for Lifts is one of the best that I've used, and I'm going to talk to you more about that when we get into the presentation slides. But also, there's a couple of special things for you today, one of which is a live practical demonstration by Zachary Fears, who is taking you through exactly how we use the Speed for Lifts system. And there's also another special guest at the end of the presentation, which I'm really excited for you to see. So let's talk a little bit more about velocity-based training. Essentially, velocity-based training is moving a bar at a given speed. And what the research has told us is that certain speeds of the bar moving create certain responses to the neuromuscular system of athletes. If we want to train for more speed and power, we use lighter loads at given percentages, but at specific bar speeds. Now, hundreds and thousands of athletes have been through these rigorous data collection processes, statistical analysis that have given us some key functions and key bandwidths to be working through. And also, when we talk about the individualization of profiles, it's just going to blow your mind and demonstrate to you exactly how important and how powerful this training technology is. For me, velocity-based training and the benefits of it boil down to three really clear things: accuracy, efficiency, and auto-regulatory training. What the accuracy is that I've just described to you is that we can predetermine specific velocities that we want to target to elicit certain responses within the body. That's huge, because if the name of the game is speed, we don't want to be training for strength. Case in point. The most important out of those three really for me is the autoregulatory. The autoregulatory response to training is managing your athlete's ability to stay fresh. Because in reality, all we want to do is the least amount of work to get the highest amount of result out of it. If you are working in the professional environment with multiple athletes going through in-season to off-season, etc., then you know that peaking for the weekend, like I worked in professional rugby, was the most important thing. You have 4-day turnarounds, 5-day turnarounds, 6-day turnarounds, 7-day turnarounds. Managing that and understanding what you're trying to do for your athletes to ensure that they peak every week is incredibly important. And also, if you're working, for instance, in the track and field environment, knowing that we have to de-stress the athlete leading into major competitions, of which there are only really 2 points of the year on which we want them to do the best. And for instance, in some of those, that may only be 1 race or 1 competition. Then we really need to know that we are backing off, we are regulating, we are maximizing all of our potential benefits from what we call velocity-based training and the auto-regulatory response to training. This takes me down another avenue when we talk about velocity-based training in terms of the motivation, in terms of the accuracy. Like I said, it is that having, and I've seen this with my own eyes, it doesn't even have to have the research to back it, is having someone calling out the number of the bar speed of which you're achieving intrinsically motivates an athlete beyond belief, and we get higher quality work. Not to mention, the biggest question is it accurate? Of course it's accurate. There's validity papers come through, and Speed for Lifts is up there as one of the best on the market. And that's what you want out of a product, and that's what you want to understand out of your training is it telling me what I can see with my eyes, and then can we program off the back of it? Because I'm going to talk to you about adaptation now. Like I said, what we want to do is accrue the least amount of fatigue and get the most amount of gain out of it. That is performance in a nutshell for you. So when we talk about specific adaptations and periodization, we cannot test at the beginning of a block and expect a result at the end of the block if we don't understand the key performance monitoring changes that go on in between. And that's what I mean when I talk to you. And then when I say performance monitoring, this is where we have to reframe our thinking as coaches and practitioners, because when we consider performance monitoring, as in the adaptation to training stress on a day-to-day, workout-to-workout response, then we can start creating some incredibly powerful training results, incredibly responsive, reactive training programs. And what that creates is some absolute beastly athletes that are dominating performance. Now, yes, I used to use velocity-based training by eye, but now I have a device in Speed for Lifts that I know is reliable, is valid, I can trust it, and it reports some very, very strong training metrics. I've got a little story to tell you as well, just before we go in and look at the research. Working with my player who is in the NFL, we used a progressive approach to velocity-based training, of which we had to target specific adaptations. We only spent 3 weeks working in the higher percentiles of work because we were chasing bar speed and bar velocities to give us the certain responses. Now, with a practical and tactical application of velocity-based training, in 12 weeks, I was able to put over 4 inches on his counter movement jump height in 12 weeks, only lifting lower body twice a week, utilizing velocity-based training. Now, if that doesn't tell you how powerful utilizing this system is and utilizing this technology, then I don't know what is. Well, actually, I've got one more statistic, because within that time, this athlete in particular was able to convert that power, and within less than 5 weeks, take 1/10 off of his 10-yard time of a sprint. So, in context, we use the velocity-based training if we're looking at field sports, which is my major concern and my major interest. We use the power that we can harness from velocity-based training, and then we take it and convert it into the field. So, I'm going to leave you with those thoughts, but then what we're going to do is we're going to jump straight in now into the velocity-based training theory, application, and some of the research behind it before I hand you over to Zachary Fears and our very special guest. So, without further ado, here's the research.
So in this second part of the webinar, we're going to start digging into the science behind velocity-based training and determining and demonstrating its true effectiveness as a well thought out, scientifically proven training means to allow appropriate adaptation for all your athletes in your own training. So the main issue that we really have to understand here, and the one that velocity-based training can combat and overcome, is the traditional estimation of 1 rep maxes and the subsequent training prescription of those. For instance, a 1 RM has always been prescribed and tested on a perfect training day, right at the beginning of a block when you're incredibly fresh, and then you will program based off that number for the next anywhere up to 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, even in some cases. Now, what we have here, and the understanding that we need to grasp, and what this current research has demonstrated in this slide has shown, is the high variation of estimated 1 RM from day to day. Now, this can be attributed to multiple things. One, for instance, being the fact that the training block that's just been commenced has actually caused too much stress and too much fatigue, either by too much volume or too much intensity of weight. But there are also other factors: level of preparedness of the athlete coming into the program, sleep, nutrition, just general ability to recover. So therefore, on a day-to-day basis, the prescription of 1 RM is going to change. And the other stumbling block that we come across with that is that we cannot test 1 RM every day with our athletes. So therefore, using velocity-based training, as demonstrated further in this research here, shows that the estimation of nearly 36% of 1 RM varies from day to day. Now, as an experienced coach, I know that this is going to cause me problems later down the line with the athletes, and what we have to do is understand our concepts and our ability to make decisions based on the real world application, and this is where the velocity based training can further develop. And when we look at some of the traditional research, such as this formula prescribed from 1993, so a long time ago, it did demonstrate there's a direct relationship between the percentage of 1 RM and reps to fatigue. Yes, what this is doing is going to demonstrate that we can train at a suitable level. However, what it's still not going to allow us to do is to understand the day-to-day fluctuations, and that's the real most important part of this, is to determine the true effectiveness of a strength training or power athletic performance program, is to understand the way an athlete reacts to training on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, month-to-month basis. And this is where using these sub-maximal predictive equations can help us, but then when we tie that into the methodologies that we can use within velocity-based training, then we can come up with an incredibly effective approach to performance training. So as we further look into some of the research, and this meta-analysis conducted into the effects of repetition failure on muscular strength demonstrates an incredibly poor correlation between the percentage of 1 RM and reps achieved. Now, again, as we go back and we look at the problems of understanding the relative effect of training at a certain level, a percentage of 1RM to elicit athletic performance responses, we still need to dig and understand further the efficiency of training, the efficiency of the management of our athletes, and also the effectiveness of our training response. So as you can see here with this research, that training to failure on a long-term approach anyway is going to cause us a lot of problems and a lot of issues with our athletes. And what we need to do, and when we consider the applications of velocity-based training, is that we can maintain quality through effort and understanding that velocity losses are going to give us the most effective stimulus, because within certain brackets of work we will be maintaining efficiency and certain adaptations that we're looking for. However, if we start training to failure, then our adaptations are going to change. So looking at this study with the comparison between endurance athletes and weightlifting athletes demonstrates again the relationship between the number of repetitions performed at a given percentage and how this can differ between athletes. And as coaches, what we do actually have to understand is the difference between sports, and using absolute percentages of 1RMs here clearly demonstrates that this is an issue. This is a problem. Take, for instance, at 70% of 1RM, the endurance group completed on average nearly 40 reps compared to the 17 reps of at a given percentage on a leg press, which again, as I said, further demonstrates the lack of effectiveness and lack of foresight with the current progression of scientific research to demonstrate that percentage of 1RM as a mass prescription model is not conducive to develop key athletic performance. In fact, testing 5RM, 10RM tests with an encoder demonstrates that actually with that level of mechanical strain we can actually see that the velocity achieved there using repetitions to failure will show you that the final reps are actually close to the 1RM speed. So what this does is actually demonstrate again further the lack of effectiveness of traditional 1RM testing and estimations of 1RMs to failure to allow us a suitable training means. Again, we fall into the problem of efficiency, effectiveness, usability, and also the long-term planning and practical applications for the development and the betterment of our athletes. So as we dig a little bit further, we need to understand the alternatives of what we are trying to achieve. And over the last 10 to 12 years, a lot of the research has come back to what we have known as a load velocity profile, which essentially is the speed of which the bar is moving relative to the percentage of 1RM. And as you can see from this research depicted here, there's a very high correlation with multiple athletes going through certain tests. As you can see here, 176 athletes completed the individual load velocity profiles with exceptionally high correlation scores here. And what we are doing with this is demonstrating an incredible amount of accuracy with high coefficients and giving our athletes the best chance to develop and progress in the most appropriate way. And that's a key point to understand when you're talking about athlete health, athlete management, the periodization of training, and the determining effectiveness of work. So when we continue to look further with this research, what you can see here is the difference between group 1 and group 2 the mean difference over time when looking at the maximum propulsion velocity for each percentage of 1 rm. And what you can see as we go through, if you look at that right hand column, the difference is incredibly minimal over a 6-week training block, which again demonstrates the effectiveness and validity of actually training in this way. So therefore we are moving in the right direction in the development of training. However, what we need to understand is within this load velocity profiling is the variation between lifts. Now, this research demonstrates that there is a high inter-subject gender variance and there are changes between the exercises. So therefore, again, just like a 1 repetition max, you cannot then broad brush absolutely prescribe a load velocity profile across the board. We have to create individual profiles between men and women and for lifts, which is the most important thing. Now, with the advent of some technology and especially speed for lifts, we can demonstrate how quickly, effectively and very easily this can be done. So again, further, when we do look at the mean values, it's fine. But what we have to do is consider standard deviation, because as you can see here, you should all be very familiar with this chart, is that one standard deviation only covers 68% of the population, which then in turn gives us 1/3 of the population have higher or lower values. So again, if you are only considering and factoring in 68% of your gym population or your athlete population within this programming, then you are leaving a lot on the table. You're leaving a lot of individualization and effectiveness on the table. So therefore, again, we do have to reiterate that using individual profiles is the way that you are going to determine the most effective training solutions for your athletes. So as we progress, and if we take this as actually a practical application, as when we consider here, if we are training at 75% of 1 RM, conventionally that will give us a rough speed as dictated within the picture. Now, however, if we start using mean velocity and broad brushing that, and in theory, if we had a squad of 23 players, based on our previous observation, that 7 or 8 players would be completely over or underestimated based on this figure alone. So as you can see, is that, you know, some people will be training upwards of 85% of a 1 RM, and some people will be training less than 70% of a 1 RM. So therefore we get no accuracy in the development of our athletes. And anyone that's worked inside the professional environment or a dense team sport environment will know and understand the power of actually overstimulating your athletes on an in-season week is really, really costly and can cause some real big problems within performance. So again, we have to understand the solution, and as we go through, that solution is creating an individual load velocity profile, not like previously mentioned with some of the correlation studies, but creating an individual load velocity profile for that athlete, because one size does not fit all. The way that you can do this is that you perform incremental tests with 4 to 5 loads. When this is done, using the software that Speed for Lifts provides will measure the individual velocity at each load, will plot those values to create an individual load profile, which will then estimate a true 1 RM, which can be re-evaluated very, very easily. As you can see, the R value and the R score of this load velocity profile is incredibly high, which is what we want to understand. And then the development of velocity-based training is to determine effectiveness, accuracy, individualization, and true levels of performance realization. So as we move forward, utilizing this load velocity profile to generate daily estimation of 1RM is purely where the uniqueness and the genius in this new scientifically proven training means lies. Because what you can see here is that once you've generated your load velocity profile, you can then measure the velocity of one load. An example here is given as 45 kilos, and that's going to give you the mean velocity of that lift. Maybe you could do a couple of reps. Then what you do is you plot that velocity in accordance to your existing load velocity profile, which will then auto-regulate and adjust your training for that day. So therefore, as you can see in the graph pictured here, that the intersection of the velocity at 50% of 1RM was previously a little bit lower, so therefore the change in training 1RM has been adjusted, and with a high correlation and R value of 0.96. So therefore we can again demonstrate the effectiveness of this means, which is going to give you the most effective training programming for your athletes. It's going to help keep them safe, healthy, and more importantly, allow them to be better. So everything that we've just discussed and have gone through falls into the category and the paradigm of what I've referred to as velocity-based training, VBT. Now, we've just shown the drawbacks and the problems that coaches and athletes will face basing their training off traditional 1RM means, and therefore there's going to be a great cost to that. Now, velocity-based training comes through and covers 3 vital points, which we're going to look into a little bit further. Real-time feedback, for motivation, but also for understanding of management of intensity, also volume, and what we're going to be looking at within this is controlling for intensity, controlling for fatigue, which is what systems such as the Speed for Lifts allow, which is fantastic, because what it's going to do is revolutionize your training and help develop your training practice and your coaching and your understanding of what your training is going to be doing to the athletes that you are coaching. This study demonstrates the effectiveness of training at maximal intent and maximum velocity is going to improve the athlete's 1RM performance over and over again, which is fantastic, because then what we can understand, because here if you look at the two tables, the table with 2 variables, is that training at half velocity compared to maximum velocity shows a significant improvement in percentage of actual 1RM attained for pre and post training for each group. Now, intent is going to outweigh prescription over and over and over again, which is so important to be understanding and utilizing systems such as Speeds for Lifts to determine maximum intent, maximum velocity at a given percentage, which is going to allow you to develop and improve. When we start looking at the other side of performance, which is the efficiency, and again this comes into effectiveness, what we are trying to mitigate the whole time when being a responsible strength and conditioning practitioner is we are trying to limit the amount of fatigue that we are placing upon our athletes and maximizing the gain and return that we can get for it. So therefore, take for instance this study demonstrates that using velocity loss as a variable to create auto-regulation within training, so to preserve freshness in our athletes, shows again to improve performance and is going to help sustain long-term performance gains. And as we mentioned and touched on at the beginning, with one of the drawbacks from daily utilization of 1RM is that we cannot understand fatigue. But with utilizing speed for lifts and velocity-based training paradigms, then we understand that velocity loss is a very good indicator for us to be able to manage the stress that we are placing upon our athletes. Further reinforcing this point is that this research shows the effectiveness of velocity loss during resistance training on athletic performance. So this study compared the effects of 40% velocity loss to 20% of velocity loss, and they're testing that against counter movement jump, but then also, as you can see, factoring in hypertrophy. Immediately, as you can imagine, the study revealed that a loss of 20% velocity per set as a cutoff alleviated and less fatigue, which then gave us a higher improved counter movement jump score, whereas velocity loss of 40% gave us hypertrophy gains. So obviously what you can understand there is that when we are training with 20% velocity loss, we are being incredibly efficient with our training. We are doing less work. We are accruing less fatigue. However, we are getting more performance gain. So it goes back to the initial point that when we start training and incurring too much volume within a given set, we actually start changing the adaptation for our response. So we need to be clear in our approach to the training methodologies of which we are using and implementing to get the desired outcome. So when we consider another important variable of velocity-based training is the feedback and utilizing real-time feedback. It really works. Evidently, to put it short, having the numbers recited back to you of a given bar speed or a power output or a certain metric that you want to choose visually and auditory improves the ability of an athlete to produce higher speeds, higher powers, higher effort time and time again, which is fantastic, because what this allows for and what this will actually do to the athlete is to bring in motivational factors and will then drive performance. And if we tie that back into velocity loss, if we are improving the amount of reps that we can achieve, for instance, if we are looking to improve counter movement jump performance, if we are accruing more repetitions with less percentage velocity loss, then we are accumulating higher quality work and higher quality volume of work, which is going to allow the athletes to improve and develop so effectively, which is exactly what we are after when we are developing athletic performance. And this research demonstrates the effectiveness of efficiency that velocity-based training can give you as a coach. Now, within this research, they compared mean total volume from traditional 1RM to velocity-based training. Now, the results of the outcome were relatively similar, and you can see in the bench press there's actually greater improvements. However, if you look into the detail and look into the first two numeric columns in the table, there's actually, this demonstrates the effectiveness of efficiency, because in the velocity-based training groups, the athletes here were actually doing less work but getting the similar result out. So therefore, as a coach, if I, as I mentioned before, if I can get better by doing less work and accumulate less fatigue, then in the long run, and in accordance to supercompensation principles and general adaptation syndrome, then I am going to be getting better long term. Because if you can imagine how you can extrapolate this data over a long term period of time, then you're going to see that across multiple years of training, you're going to be getting better by doing less work. And remember, the ultimate goal for physical preparation is to affect performance in whatever sporting arena that you are looking at. So how is this all measured? Technology. And obviously here you can see there are multiple different forms of devices on the market, all at different price points and all with different technology. So what we're going to be doing is having a little look at a couple of them and the ones that I've used in particular, and I'll be talking to you about how and my thoughts on this technology. So here we have the conventional linear transducer, which is what the Speeds for Lifts device is. Essentially, there is a cable that's connected to the bar, which is connected to an encoder, which is in the device. Now, this is the most accurate form of velocity-based training tool that you can buy, because the bar is directly connected to the thing that measures it, and it calculates velocity by measuring displacement over time. However, this does come at an expense, and some of the well-known brands that you will be aware of can see these linear transducer devices costing upwards of £2,000 per unit, which is very, very expensive, as said. However, also justifying budgets for technology, as this is very, very difficult to get past. So this is one of the great benefits of the Speed for Lift system, which you will learn more about later on in this presentation. Moving forward to accelerometers. Now, I've used accelerometers and both of these extensively in the past, and they do come at a much lower price point, which make them incredibly more accessible. They are very portable, but with all this, they are incredibly inaccurate, unfortunately, because the accelerometer and the technology behind it is that it's constantly measuring its relationship to the ground, rather than with the encoder being something inside the encoder being actually accelerated. This is measuring its displacement to the ground over and over again, which has a high level of variance and inaccuracy to it as well. So, but again, the positive side here is that Speed for Lifts matches the price point and beats the accuracy, which is very, very important. The utilization of high-speed camera. MyLift uses the high-speed camera on your mobile device, which very similar to MyJump, which can be completed right on your phone with the estimation of 1RMs and velocities. However, it is incredibly time consuming. It's not conducive to the productivity of the training process, and you do need to have predefined limb lengths, etc. within it. So if you can imagine trying to get through 3 or 4 athletes, or even 2 athletes at any time for multiple reps, it's just not going to be conducive enough, and it's not good for the practical application in the real world environment. So taking this all into account, there's some further research that validates the Speed for Lift system, which is fantastic to be able to see that we stand by a very strong product. And here you can see that across all these other commercial brands, the R value of the Speed for Lift system when compared to the OptiTrack had a value of 9.94, an R value which is absolutely outstanding in the demonstration of the validity of this tool, which furthermore just improves and demonstrates to you the usefulness of this tool to have in your practice. So what we can determine from this short presentation with a deep dive into the scientific research and applications around the key fundamentals of velocity-based training is that the Speed for Lift system provides incredible value, complemented by its astonishing accuracy and reliability. So now what I would like to do is introduce you to Zachary Fears, the Director of Sports Performance at Southeastern Oklahoma, With many years of experience of coaching teams and using velocity-based training on a daily basis, he has prepared a demonstration that both coaches and athletes can see how the Speed for Lift system works and how to use it in a real training environment with many people in a very dynamic fashion. This is a really practical example of how useful the velocity-based training system of Speed for Lifts is for your practice.
Hey, this is Zach Fierce with Speed for Lifts. So basically what I have today is I just want to talk about the Speed for Lifts encoder and how we use it. So to start out with, it's a pretty lightweight box. It has magnets on the bottom, so you can basically stick it to the rack if you want to, and it'll hold itself there. Sometimes if you're using it on the ground, we'll actually utilize a plate, and it can stick right to that, and then you'll just simply use it, and it'll give you a readout on it. So when we do with the Speed for Lifts encoder, every time you use it, it's going to show up 5 different categories. So we're going to have our average velocity, our peak velocity, overall power output in watts, our overall range of motion in centimeters, and then a projected max at the end. I found the projected max to be pretty accurate, especially when we're around 80 to 90%. I like to use this when we're trying to go heavy, but I don't necessarily want to max the guys out. So for example, on our first rack today in the video, we'll show an example that's anything over 0.3 meters per second. So we'll actually shut them down if we go over 0.3 meters per second. So one of the settings that I really like on this is the fatigue setting. So we can actually activate it, okay? And for example, I'm gonna put this at 0.6 meters per second. So I'll activate that and I'll basically get alerted every time we go below 0.6 meters per second. So for example, once I start here and I get moving,
077, 073.
anytime I go below 0.6, it'll flag me that I'm going too slow. That's one of the features that I really like about this. This allows us to basically get alerted if we go below a certain speed that we desire. One of the other settings that I really like about this is we actually can set fatigue on this. So you can do a stop velocity again, which I already showed, but the other one is an activate fatigue. So if we have a certain number that we drop below, say 15% below 0.8, it's gonna allow me to drop that off. So we can actually have that set so it activates in sets. So say our best set is 1.0, if we have a drop off of 15% at 0.85, it'll actually shut us off. It'll beep and alarm us, letting us know that we need to stop that set. So one of the best features I think about this system is the fact that it gives you in-time bar graphs. That's gonna allow us to see where we're at, but it also gives the athletes some instant feedback so they understand. They may not know what 0.8 meters per second is, but they do understand one bar being higher than the other. For example,
061, 086, 076, 069, 071.
so one thing I really like about this too is it also gives us a range of motion. So we can actually sit and we can tell how far the athlete's traveling when they do an exercise. One of the other really cool things about it is you can actually set the range of motion to a certain centimeter. So for example, if you're doing a clean and you don't want it to register the bounce from when you drop it on the ground, you can actually change that. So basically we'll just go to settings, we go to the range of motion filter, and I'll just click on clean, and because when it bounces, it typically is gonna go higher than 20 centimeters. We'll actually just move that up something higher, somewhere around 80 centimeters, where that bounce won't register. So that makes it a little bit easier to use for Olympic lifts and stuff like that, where you drop the bar and it's gonna bounce back up. So there's also a timer setting on the tablet where you can basically set it for a countdown. So if I go up here, I set it to 5 seconds. When I hit start, it'll give me a countdown. I like using this when I'm doing it by myself or anything like that, where it gives us a little bit of a notification of where we're at. One thing I really like about this is there's also a user tab. It's pretty simple to change out the user. So we're basically just gonna go to the tab on the bottom right, and then we're gonna have added users. It's really simple to add a user. Just basically pick an email, a username, and then you're gonna put them on your tablet. And it's pretty simple. We just click on tabs, and we can transfer through different athletes. Now, I only have myself on here and my wife, but it's very simple to just go through so we can keep all the data on the athlete. So the battery life on the encoder is pretty good. It lasts about 8 to 10 hours. I personally use it myself, and it lasted me almost a month the first time I ever used it. It also has a really fast charge time. It only takes about 2 hours to charge. Typically, you'd have to get directly under an object to get a good registered speed on it. However, with this, you can get a slight angle, and what it's going to do is it's not going to affect your reading as much as a normal linear accelerometer. So when you do that, basically it's nice for Olympic lifts where you're worried about having the bar smash directly down on top of these, because they're obviously, they're well built, but they are, if you drop 315 pounds on or something like that, it will break it. So it does get it away from the bar a little bit more. It can be more convenient for certain areas, certain racks, stuff like that as well. So there's also an eccentric portion to the lift. So if I go into my settings, I can turn on or turn off eccentric. So that means it'll read the concentric and the eccentric reps separately, which is really nice because these days in strength conditioning we do a lot of eccentric work. Obviously we know about injury prevention, stuff like that. But for example, I can work on a concentric rep
119.
and then a slow eccentric rep, and it'll give me readings.
018.
So one other thing that's nice about this, while it's nice to have it hooked up to a tablet and all that stuff, it will actually give you a reading on here without having a tablet. So it's not going to give you the power output, but it's going to give you an average velocity, which is what we use often. Simply pulling on the string, and it will register on the Speed for Lifts encoder every single rep. So the very first one we have is a single rep failure prevention. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to stay above 0.3 meters per second. Today we did on the bench press. Usually we keep that number just a little bit higher for squats. But basically the idea here is to push the athlete close to failure, but making sure they stay above 0.3 meters or 0.4 meters. That's really up to you to choose. But this is going to keep the athlete safe. It's going to keep them from missing reps. I like to use this when we don't necessarily want to get a true max on the athlete. Sometimes in season, anytime like that's a great time to use it. The other thing is the tablet will actually give a 1 rep prediction max, and that'll give us a good idea of where the athlete is at.
Good speed, good speed. Lightweight. Big punch, big punch. Lightweight. Lightweight. Explode up. Yeah. 139.
So the next method we use is a multiple rep failure prevention. So typically this is going to be a little bit lighter weight, usually in a hypertrophy phase where we're going to get a lot more volume in. So for example, today we had our athletes doing 185. The goal is to stay above 0.5 meters per second. If they ever went below that, they racked it up. This makes sure that they don't fail in a rep and that they're going to get quality reps in as opposed to grinding out that last rep or two, which is where most injuries occur.
Fast up, fast up. Drop. 0.72, 0.82, 0.8, 0.77, 0.76, 0.75.
So the next thing we have is we have adjustment sets by velocity. So basically every single set will dictate what the next set does. So for example, this currently is at 0.3 meters per second, which is a pretty low speed. Usually we'll run that just a little bit higher. But basically what will happen is that the athlete does 135 and they say they do 1.2 meters per second, we're going to adjust up that. So we go over to the 1.2 and that's going to adjust them up to about 205. We keep using that until their velocity starts to slow to our desired velocity right here. So this is going to be really good. We can pick a velocity for say in-season teams. Often I'll run somewhere around 0.7, 0.8 so we make sure we're getting quality reps. The other thing it does is it gets our athletes competing because they want to move more weight faster.
0.73. 0.64.
So the next one we just use the device simply for feedback. So it's going to give us just a flat number. So say we put the athlete at 185 pounds and they're going to hit as fast as they can. So it's just simply going to give us feedback. The other thing we use this for is we try to create competition with our athletes. So we'll basically have them trying to move it faster than the other athletes. So we like to breed competition. We know that competition is just going to make our athletes better.
7-7, 9-7, 9-4, 102, 88, 98, 87, 93.
So hopefully you kind of understand some of the way we use our Speed for Lifts encoder today. Just want to know that we didn't even come close to using all the possibilities of how we use the encoder. We just showed you some of the ways that we use it and some of the ways that I believe it's best used with our athletes.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that practical demonstration as much as I did by Zach. He's an awesome coach and doing some great things there with the Speed for Lift system. At the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned to you we had a special guest, and we do. Leanna Carr is a PhD sports psychology student, a figure pro, and a badass powerlifter. And she's here to talk to you all about her experience and utilization of the Speed for Lifts training device within her own training. So, over to you, Leanna.
Hi everybody, my name is Leanna Carr and I'm a competitive powerlifter, a natural figure pro, and a PhD student. My background is in sport and exercise psychology and psychophysiology, and I am a fitness, strength, and performance coach based out of Seattle, Washington. So I've been lucky enough to be able to use my Speed for Lifts device for the past 5 months now, and truthfully, I could not recommend it more. I just could not be happier with the device. In general, I'm just a huge fan of velocity-based training in general. I just have been for a few years now. And I'd like to kind of just talk about that and tell you a little bit about why that is. So first, as both a coach and an athlete, I understand that there are a lot of variables and a lot of factors, such as stress, sleep, training fatigue, nutrition, motivation, that all affect our daily readiness to perform. Okay, it's important to realize that our maximum strength varies from day to day, and sometimes that variance is pretty substantial. So we have tools such as RPE, or reps in reserve scales, that allow us and can be very helpful in assessing that readiness to be able to ensure that we are applying an adequate training stress in conjunction with our readiness to perform on any given day. However, the downside to those scales is that they're often very subjective in nature, and no matter how long you've been using it, they're just sometimes hard to gauge. Okay, so what velocity-based training does is it allows us to have an objective measure to what's otherwise just a very subjective piece of data. It allows us to know, specifically based off of velocity, our proximity to failure once we establish our specific velocity profile. So for example, and we've probably all been in this situation where we go into the gym and we squat, and the squat just feels really slow and ugly and grindy. And then we go look at a video, because of course we recorded it. It doesn't count if you don't record it. And we look at the video and we're like, that actually moved a lot faster than I thought it would. It was a lot faster than I perceived it to be underneath the squat bar. So for that particular example, RPE rating is probably just not going to be very consistent with how many reps we're actually able to perform, because there's such a large disparity between what we perceived as difficult versus what our actual performance capacity is. So VBT helps us allows us to understand what that actual performance capacity is based off of bar velocity rather than subjective and perceived difficulty. So recently in my own training, I've actually been using the device to allow me to be able to pull from a daily dynamic max rather than a static number from previous testing. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So for example, on my deadlift days, I've been working up to a conservative single each day, something that would be around an 8 RPE. So say that my last estimated 1 rep max for my previous block of testing was 170 kilograms. I'll maybe work up to, let's say, 150 kilograms on any given day. And then I'm going to assess the velocity of the bar once I work up to that weight, and then estimate my daily max. So sometimes if I'm having a really good training day and everything's just, crispy and moving fast, Speed for Lifts is going to tell me that my max is a bit higher. Whereas other days where I'm going into the gym and I'm just not really feeling it or not really having a good day, Speed for Lifts is also going to let me know that, and I'm just going to have to go into that knowing that I'm probably going to have to work off of a lower daily max that day. So from there, I will look at my program, I'll see what percentages I have programmed, and I'm going to pull from that daily max instead, right? So it's dynamic, it's changing, rather than using a static number from prior testing. Okay, so again, this is just one way I've been using it. It's really been awesome, actually, just as opposed to solely using RPE. So all that to say, I would recommend Speed for Lifts to all my clients, my friends, just anyone in general looking to get stronger. The app itself, it's very durable, it's simple, it's easy to navigate. And I think what really sets this specific device, apart from other VBT devices I've used, is the app itself, you know, the Speed for Lifts app itself that the team over there has created. You know, it's very solid. It just has a very quality infrastructure. And one thing that I really liked was that it allows you to create your own custom strength equations and load velocity profile for any lift that you want. So, you know, not just squat, bench, and deadlift, but there's a whole database of movements, of exercises that you're able to use, and you're able to keep track of and store your data through the app, which I think is just a really important aspect and tool in order to continue progressing. It also has, this is a cool little thing it does, but it has the option of using verbal feedback. Okay, so the device itself will not only tell you the velocity of each rep once you've finished it, but you can also set it to be able to tell you once you've dropped off a specific amount of velocity across a set. Okay, this is a feature, that last one I haven't really used it that much, but I would like to use it, you know, and I just haven't really seen any other device be able to do that. So all this to say, you know, I think that VBT is just a very helpful tool to be able to add to your toolbox. And having, you know, been competitive lifting and coaching for several years now, I know that progress comes at a very slow rate, unfortunately, especially in strength sports, you know. And if you're not adding and observing, you know, 2.5 or 5 kilos to the bar week after week, it's really hard to be able to observe your progress, you know. And we know that those increments just aren't very realistic, especially the longer you've been in the game, the longer you've been lifting. However, it's also important to realize that moving the same weight faster is also an indication of progress. Okay, so say that your weight on the bar is the same, but your velocity is getting faster over time. That's probably a pretty good indication that you're getting stronger, or that your form is becoming more efficient, and that your existing strategy, the one that you're using, is probably working. Okay, so you don't only have to rely on weight on the bar in order to quantify success. And I think that velocity-based training is just really important to help you realize that. And Speed for Lifts allows you to do that. Okay, so all of this to say, you know, like I said, I couldn't recommend Speed for Lifts more. Thank you so much for making just such a quality product. You know, it's just, like I said, the best velocity training product I've used. Thank you for allowing me to use it, and thank you all for tuning in. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask away. But like I said, I fully endorse this product and I could not recommend it more. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Iker and I am one of the founders of Speed for Lifts. This seminar is coming to an end and we would love to finish it with a 15% discount in our device. A device that is more or less 7 times more affordable than a GymAware. But as you can find in our website, a very recent study has been published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research and has termed Speed for Lifts as the most reliable device in the market. You simply need to apply this coupon code in our store for getting this discount. But that's not all. In addition to this 15% discount, the fastest and the first 40 clients will get a free video answering to the most common questions you have about velocity-based training, made by 2 references in velocity-based training. We ship all around the world, so if you are from the US or from Europe, you won't pay any taxes and you won't pay any customs. Everything you will pay is the price you can see in our store, applying this 15% discount. And as we want to be fully transparent with our product, we are giving you a 30-day of money-back guarantee. So during these 30 days, you can try and test our device. And if you don't like it, you can send it back to us and we will refund you the money. As for the warranty, we give 2 years of total warranty. So do not worry if you have any trouble with your device, because we are going to solve it to you as soon as possible. We have been in the market for some years and I think I can say that we give a very good support. So do not worry, because we will help you in everything you need. When you purchase the device, you will also get, for the same price, this neoprene bag for carrying out your device, and this Velcro strap that you can attach to the barbell. But apart from that, you can find in our store this roller hook that can be attached to the thread and to the barbell with no strap, just with magnetic hook. It is so useful because you don't need to place the strap in the barbell. And you can also buy this smartphone mount. So you can take your smartphone and plug it in the rack. So when you are lifting, you can see, because you have in the front of your face all the reps, you can see the velocity in real time. And now I'm gonna show you how to place the order, and you will see that it's so easy. Right now I'm on the same web page you are, so on the seminar web page, and here you will find your coupon code. This one is just an example, so you need to copy your coupon code, you copy it, and you click on buy, and you will go to the Speed for Lifts store. And here you will find all our products, so you just need to add to the cart the ones you want. For example, the smartphone mount, the roller hook, and the Speed for Lifts encoder. So once you have everything added, you can put here any note for us if you need to, and you can buy it by using PayPal or Google Pay. And if you go to checkout, here you can put the coupon code and get the discount. You click on apply and you will see the price change. So right now you get the coupon code applied. You just need to put here your email address, first name, last name, company, if you got a company. If you don't have anything, you have to leave this blank. Your address, city, country, zip code, and phone. You click on continue shipping and it will just ask you for your credit card number. When you put it, you click on buy and you will receive an email. And after that, when we receive your product, you will also receive the tracking number. So as I told you before, you got 30 days of money back guarantee, so you can test it, you can prove it, and if you think that it is not for you, you can send us back to us and we'll refund you all the money. So apart from that, you got 2 years of warranty, and the shipping delivery is normally so fast. So if you need anything, you just write to us and we'll give you our best possible attention and we'll answer you very quickly. So thank you for attending this seminar and I hope you have enjoyed it.